Hi, everyone. Welcome to a Quantic industry meetup, specifically the education meetup. Allow me to introduce you all to Jeremy Chia, who serves on the board of Soap Cycling Singapore as its director. He first engaged with soap cycling in Hong Kong in 2018 through the Social Venture Management Internship course offered at the University of Hong Kong. During his 6 month stint with them, he contributed to the local operations and interacted with the elderly and the youth from the May program. After returning home, he continued to contribute and support Soap Cycling's chapter in Singapore. Jeremy is a consultant at LucaNet ASEAN, a company that offers software solutions for financial performance management. He is passionate about community-centric projects and bridging the gap between accounting, analytics, and sustainability. Today, Jeremy will be sharing the story of soap cycling as a social enterprise and how a simple bar of soap can have tremendous impact on multiple fronts, not just in the hands of those who are getting their hands clean. Jeremy, I've said enough. I'd love to pass the time to you now.
Thanks so much, Grace. Very kind introduction and very good morning, afternoon, or evening to everybody, depending on where you're tuning in from. I've just got a short presentation lined up for everybody, just to share with you and give you maybe some ideas about what soap cycling is about. Grace already did a very good job of telling you my engagement with soap cycling, so I'm not going to go too much into that, but I'm just going to share with you what collectively our story has been over the years. So, just to give you an idea about what soap cycling is about, there are three pillars to it. The first one is improving hygiene, especially in light of COVID-19. Many people have now recognized the importance of a bar of soap or just keeping your hands clean. And what soap cycling really started out to do was to provide this mean of sanitation to vulnerable groups, people who needed them, both in the places that we operate as well as in the region. The second part of it, which I thought was really, really novel, was to drive the reduction of wastage in the hospitality industry. So if you imagine just a bar of soap in the hotel, imagine that you just open the wrapper and maybe you leave it there. A lot of times housekeeping just throws it away. So what soap cycling does is that we come in, we take that bar of soap and we give it a new lease of life. And the third part, which is really how I got engaged and how many other people got engaged as well, is that soap cycling is meant as a vehicle to provide opportunities for education and empowerment to all its stakeholders through the recycling of soap. So some social issues at a glance. This deck is prepared more specifically for a Singapore context. But you imagine that even in a place like Singapore, I think a lot of people are still very shocked that there is a shortage of soap, and in fact, the pandemic has exposed just that. So maybe just one number that I wanted to point out was the first one. 41. We did a survey last year, so we did a study, and it did show that 41% of the migrant workers in Singapore reflected that they did not have access to adequate soap or sanitizers in April 2020, so just about a year ago when Singapore went into lockdown. So we're very glad to be able to have played a part in getting some soap over to them, their community, and as well as to play our part in fighting the pandemic. So just a little bit more for context, and I think because this is an education meetup, I think this is a part that you might find a little bit interesting. So soul cycling started in Hong Kong. Well, it was actually founded by a law lecturer by the name of Mr. David Bishop. So he teaches at the University of Hong Kong. And at that point in time, he was a few years into his stint at HKU. So he said that, and basically the idea that underpinned soap cycling was that he wanted to give his students a chance to run a business. So he gathered a group of them and said, "Hey, look, if I'm willing to take out and put down some capital, will you run the business?" So there was a few ideas out there. They were just picking they were just deciding what to go with, and that's how soap cycling actually started, because the students chose soap cycling. It really started by boxes and boxes of soap being collected from hotels. It was stacked in his staff room. It got to a point where the smell of the soap was so fragrant that you could smell it in the corridors, and then that's when they knew they had to move out to a bigger space. But since then, successive groups of students have joined soap cycling. They have been a part of soap cycling story, and we have since expanded to different locations. So in Singapore, where I'm based, this started in 2017. It was pioneered by a group of students from the National University of Singapore. So the way that the operations in Singapore kind of started was that it hinged on the work that the group of students had built up in Hong Kong. By then, there were already some connections that we have made with hotels as well as corporates in Hong Kong who were very interested to work with us in Singapore. So then the students hit the ground running in Singapore, and successively there were groups of students who came in and came out and tried to uh, boost and really start the operations in Singapore. Right now, we have gone to Shenzhen. We are also in Manila. And yeah, I mean, well, so lots of work to be done. So I'm just gonna skip through some slides because I know I want to give everybody some time to ask questions um, as well as to have a chance to interact. So if there's any particular slide that you'd like me to go back to later on, feel free to just ask. But maybe on this note, I just wanted to highlight that the sustainability part of soap cycling comes in also with our alignment to the UN SDGs. So there are certain things that we focus on that are very aligned to the core pillars of soap cycling's operations. So if I were to kind of define it in another diagram, this is where all the different stakeholders comes in our process. So the slope bar starts well from the hotels or fragrance manufacturers. So we collect them, we take them off their hands, and with the help of volunteers either from the public or maybe corporate volunteers, this soap is then being processed, and after that, we distribute it to people in need. So in Singapore, this soap goes to the migrant workers, but it also goes to vulnerable individuals in our community. And as part of that, soap cycling is really the education tool meant to give students a chance to run a business, but also over the years, it has also evolved into advocating for these issues as well as raising awareness about issues of wastage, the importance of sanitation and hygiene. So we recently started doing some education workshop for schools in Singapore to talk about these topics. And from the last I heard, the last I understand, they're also trying to do this in Hong Kong as well as in Shenzhen now. So yeah, these are some of the people that we work with. A lot of, I think you see some familiar names, but also it really ranges from corporate partners to hospitality partners to community partners, schools, as well as grassroots organizations, NGOs. And just hold that thought because I'll tell you why, like, soap cycling is so special to me because of that. Um, so this is just some of the work that we do. This is part of the distributions work. So you can see some of the soap here goes to the migrant workers. That's what this you have that below here. We've also worked with some grassroots organizations to get that out. Yeah, some of the soap also goes overseas as well. So on the top right, like this picture number 3, that's a group of students who did their overseas mission trip to Indonesia. So they took some soap with them, and it's really, it's really great to be able to do work like this. So this is some of the corporate sessions that we have. Well, you're probably looking at maybe picture number 1 on the top left. So that's when we went into lockdown. That's when Singapore went into lockdown. Usually we have the soap scraping sessions at the center. Everybody gathers, but because of the lockdown, well, we brought the soap to them. So we're really glad to have volunteers who have, volunteered to, they just stepped up and said, oh, hey, look, I mean, we want to do something, so can you like bring the soap to us? So we really did. Like we shipped the soap to them, and then they were scraping it in their homes. So that was really cool. But also, so I think you also noticed that there are a very, very diverse group of people that come to these sessions. What I also really love about soap cycling is that soap recycling is the center, is the core activity that we do, but it's also a platform that brings people together. So in the education context, I found it very, very meaningful for students to also be able to interact with different groups of people. So usually at our volunteering sessions where we do the soap processing, sometimes we have corporates, we have volunteers from the public, we have students, of course, those of them who are interning with soap cycling, and even pre-COVID times we had migrant workers who joined us as well. So if you just imagine like the mix of people who are at the table scraping soap together, this is, I think, very, very rare, a very, very rare occurrence. At least in Singapore's context, usually you do not find like these group of people like sitting together, and the educational value is really immense. I mean, like for students, it's great to be able to talk to corporates because that's where you get some sort of mentorship. You also get to learn more about what they do, right? There's lots of things to be learned, but even for everybody, I think a lot of times most people don't really have access to the migrant workers communities because most of the time they're either working or they're just not really in reach so much. So what I love about this is that at this session at the table, everybody is sitting together and they get to have that conversation. They get to enjoy those conversations and learn different perspectives, which I think from an educational point of view is really very valuable. Yeah, and so this is our engagement with hospitality partners. We also do some trainings for them. And of course, this is where the students come in. We had a bunch of students, and we do engagements with schools as well. So you can see, in some of the pictures over here that the students are learning from some of the volunteers. In the top left picture, you see that's Mr. Ho. So he's a migrant worker from China, and he was teaching the students how to scrape the soap. Actually, I would admit that sometimes they are better at scraping the soap than I am. So they teach me a thing or two about how to scrape soap more efficiently and better as well. So lots of things to learn. And also, yeah, I mean, well, virtually we try to, so the thing that we do very differently at soap cycling and the way that we approach internships is also that I also really appreciate is that we kind of bring students in asking them, okay, so what do you want to learn and what do you want to do? So it's not so much of they're coming in, to soap cycling just to like run the operations and whatnot, but throughout that experience, what we try to create for them is opportunities for them to achieve basically what they want to do. I mean, the starting question so we have a bunch of interns now who are from Ngee Polytechnic, so that's like a I would say a vocational school, a pre-university. So the question that I pose to them is then, when you come into soap cycling, what are some of the things that you envision that you want to write on your resume, after your entire stint, or like what do you want to do maybe after graduation? What are you looking at? What are you thinking about? So what is your aspiration? Let's see how we can use soap cycling as a platform to try to meet that aspiration, which I feel is very different from a very conventional internship. So yeah, so yeah, this is. I mean, if you like, I'm sure like we can share the link to this slide deck as well, so you can take a look at some of the stories that we have. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's been a pleasure to be able to share a little bit about soap cycling with you. I hope that sets the context for some questions or maybe some discussions later on. So yeah, thanks so much. And if you'd like to engage with us, feel free to reach us at singapore@soapcycling.org. But also, if you want to find out how to get involved or just have a conversation, always happy to do that. So yeah, thanks very much.